Hi, my name is Sarah Haderlie, and this is my presentation on promoting positive behavior. You'll find this information in my resources and also in Chapter 10 of our textbook. There are two types of ways to promote positive behavior. The first is preemptive. These are things that are done before any behavior has occurred. The second is responsive. These are methods that are used after an undesired behavior has occurred or is occurring. We're first going to look at preemptive methods. The first method we're going to look at for preemptive is physical environment. In my child development degree, it was drilled into us that the environment is the first place to change when behavior is an issue. And this goes for all classrooms, not just for early childhood classrooms. And the first thing to look at is seating, right? Where are we seating our students and how are we seating our students? This can be the seating formation. It can be where students sit next to each other. There are a lot of different types of seating. There's seating for small groups. There's U-shaped seating to promote debate, right? And if you want more resources on this website, The Helpful Professor, has a really good article about all sorts of types of seating arrangements and the pros and cons to each. And one of the things that they mentioned was that there is no right seating plan. Every class is different, right? And so there's just pros and cons. Pick what works best for your class. Next is traffic patterns. This is how people can actually move around the room. Do you have large walkways? How do students get from the door to the desk? How do they line up for recess? How do they get materials? All right. This is going to help prevent behaviors that happen when students are moving around the room. All right. Next is materials. And this is probably more important for elementary students and less important for the secondary students. Where do you keep your materials and how accessible are they? If you have little ones, do you want a lot of materials on their table or desk? Right? And if they are there, how do you want to contain them? Right? Are you okay with students getting into things? You're okay with students tapping pencils? Some teachers are and some teachers aren't. All right, so think about where those materials are. Do you want to be able to send students to pick up the materials, or do you want them to have them up higher where they can't get into them? All right, and these are going to modify some different types of behaviors, once again, especially with the little ones. Color. Now, you don't think of color as being a behavior modification, but if you have a lot of color and have a very busy classroom, it'll actually increase distraction and can cause some behavior issues. The University of San Diego talked about picking 3 colors and only 3 colors and sticking to that palette. And their idea was to have a more minimal approach. So less is more. Keep it less busy, right? And keep the colors the same. Along with this, there are other design considerations, including safety, comfort, eyesight lines, so they can see you wherever you're walking or see each other. And the San Diego University has a website that talks about some of these different design things if you want to look into it. The next preemptive thing we look at is instructional environment. All right, that's what we do as teachers. And the first thing we start with are clear, simple rules. So these are classroom rules. They should be just very simple and easy to understand. Get to know your students. That showed up time and time again as being one of the most important things, is to develop rapport with your students. Much more likely to be compliant if you have a relationship. Reduce boredom. And this is difficult because some students just really don't like school. So you do the best you can to incorporate all sorts of types of learning and movement and changing of activities the best you can. Clear expectations and instructions. So this is when we're moving into an activity or something that they know exactly, is this quiet time, is this group time, and you need to repeat yourself like 3 times at least, and you can even have them repeat it back to you what the expectation is. Transitions. Now, transitions are a time when all sorts of interesting behavior can pop up. So, this can be during like rotations for the younger grades. I saw a teacher one time, she would sing songs. This was my kids' teacher. They would sing songs between rotations, and this was the routine they used, and it really helped keep behaviors going in a positive manner. But transitions can be between recess, they can be between classes, and having consistent routines is very important to increase positive behavior during transitions. Understanding cultural differences. So different cultures react differently to different things. They have different behaviors. Make sure you understand your own bias and understand the cultures you're working with, so you don't mistakenly think that their behavior is a negative behavior. And also teach self-regulating skills if you can before you have an issue. It's just, small things can be very, very helpful. You could have, I know that my students in my kids' classes, they have the school counselor comes in and talks to them about things like this, and they have like these little periods of time. So if you can, use the resources around you, that will be helpful too. Reinforcement. So what we're going to have is we're going to have physical, verbal, and peer. So physical is like rewards and things like that. Verbal is praise from the teacher. And younger students really, really love verbal. And the literature that I read suggested that verbal reinforcement was just as powerful or more powerful than physical reinforcement. So praise was very powerful from a teacher, especially if you've developed that rapport. Now, secondary students, they said you had to be a little more careful with. If you are outright just praising secondary students, it can be embarrassing to them in front of their peers, especially students whose behavior maybe hasn't been where you all wanted it to be. Then it's sort of like pointing out that they were, doing good, quote unquote, and yeah, it's not great, is what I heard. So keeping that to a minimum, or, praising them quietly in private, that works better for the secondaries. And then peer reinforcement is really, really, really important. If you can get the whole classroom, the herd mentality, you know, believing in the certain way to act is positive, then it will be really helpful. So there you go, instructional environment. We're now going to move into responsive methods. And the first thing we're going to look at is our response as teachers. As teachers, we need to set the example for self-regulation. This can be challenging. It is helpful to remember that these are children that are in progress. Their behaviors are not personal to us. This is not personal. And that belief system helps reduce the emotional reaction that we have to students' behaviors, so we can help better teach them to self-regulate and things like that. I have this video with somebody who works with behavior issues, and she explains this probably much better than I can. Continuing on with responsive methods, what are some techniques that we can use when undesired behavior is occurring? The first is to redirect. This can be verbal, like a callback or a reminder. It can be physical, like a hand clap. I saw a teacher one time that if a student was running, she would have them stop, come back, and walk again. It was very effective, all right? You might also choose to ignore the behavior. This can be only used, of course, with nonviolent behaviors and is a type of behavior modification technique. You can expect the behavior to increase before it decreases. The next is to realize that behavior is mostly goal-directed. This means the student is receiving a benefit from the behavior. Along with this are rewards. If the reward the student is receiving from the behavior is greater than the reward you offer them, then you are unlikely to see a change. For example, if the student gets a small toy at the end of class, but their misbehavior gets their peers to laugh at them and tell them they're cool all day long, your reward is probably not going to work. You're not going to see a reduction in behavior. Right? Next is a written behavior plan. All right, this is something that you're going to work with a special education teacher. It's going to be specific to one student, and it's going to have all sorts of different techniques that are going to be used for that specific student. All right, next is peer reinforcement. Do not underestimate the power of peer pressure. Harness it for your good. All right, so for example, you're trying to redirect a class after like a group time, right? And they're coming back to quiet time, and you've done your callback, you still have a few students who are not responding. So you stand and you say, I have 4 students I'm waiting for. Now I have 3 students I'm waiting for. And a lot of times the peers will call each other back into line. You'll hear them be like, stop talking, we're all waiting. And man, that peer pressure, man, peers are very important. So, responsibly harness it, but it is very useful. Lastly are consequences. So if you have a student who has to leave because of violent behavior, right? Because violent behavior is an automatic for most places. We need to leave the classroom, even if it's just into the hallway or whatever the IEP says, but typically violent behavior is not allowed in the classroom to stay. Then the student needs to come back to the teacher when they have gone through whatever they need to do, and they still need to be accountable to their teacher. All right, and this was something very new to me. The teacher needs to have a consequence for the behavior. Leaving the classroom was not the consequence, right? They needed to leave because they were endangering other people, and they were getting the help they needed to self-regulate, and now they've come back in, and now there will be a consequence. I mean, obviously not over the top consequence, but this can just be like picking up trash or whatever the teacher wants them to do, right? And they say, hey, this behavior was not acceptable, and I'm going to need you to pick up the books that you throw on the floor, or whatever it is. But that accountability back to the teacher is really, really important, I had read. So, and that makes you to have this relationship with the student, right? The book had a special section on bullying because bullying is a huge problem, and it has been, I think, forever. And now we have cyberbullying, which is more fun. There's a great book called The Bully, the Bullied, and the Bystander, and it has been around for a long time, and it's been updated to include cyberbullying now. And the basic premise is bullying cannot be ignored, and it cannot be solved solely by the bully. So bullied. The bystander, and as teachers, that's our position, we're one of the bystanders, we have to engage to decrease bullying, right? And the more people that engage, the better. So the more people you have engaging in a situation, right, the better the outcome. And then bullies often need help too, and that's the job of bystanders as teachers, right, and as administrators to get the help for that person who bullies and to help them get their needs met, whether it's some kind of mental health disorder or some kind of home abuse or whatever it is, to help them learn, well, not to bully, and it'll be unacceptable. All right, questions. First, true or false? Very bright, colorful classroom may increase behavioral issues. And this is true. I know we all like color, but it can actually cause behavioral issues. Second, students who are bullied are always capable of handling the problem themselves. And this is false. We need the bystanders, that's us, possibly other peers and administration, to step in and intervene in these cases. These are my references, and you'll see that there are a couple of YouTube videos that weren't linked earlier in the presentation that you're welcome to watch. And this is the end of my presentation, so thank you.